Have you ever wondered if being single in old age could be the key to unlocking true freedom and happiness? As we grow older, society pressures us into believing that we need to be in a relationship to feel complete. But what if the opposite is true? What if living life on your terms, embracing independence, is the path to real fulfillment? In this video, we'll challenge everything you've been told about relationships, commitment, and what it means to truly love and be loved. By the end, you'll discover how forced monogamy and societal expectations can trap us in unhappy cycles, and why embracing solitude might be the most liberating choice you can make for your happiness and personal growth. We'll explore the deep connection between true freedom and being single, and how this freedom can enhance your relationships if you choose to have them. You'll learn how the fear of loneliness has shaped societal views on love, and how breaking free from these norms can lead to a more authentic, meaningful life. So, stick with us until the end, because this video will offer you a fresh perspective on love, independence, and the freedom to live life on your terms. Trust me, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Romantic love has been placed on such a lofty pedestal in our society, as though it is the ultimate achievement we should all strive for. It's as if, by not being partnered, you are somehow failing in life, as if your existence holds no true meaning unless you're entwined in a romantic relationship. Society has fed us this idea so deeply that it's ingrained in our very core, convincing us that success and fulfillment lie solely in being with another person. It's a narrative that says, if you're not with someone, you're incomplete, you're missing something vital. But if we take a moment to pause and truly look around, we begin to see that this notion is nothing but a cleverly constructed myth, a story we've been conditioned to believe. Despite how society pushes us to chase this illusion, the reality is simple and clear. We were born free. Our lives, from beginning to end, are ours alone to live and navigate. Relationships, societal expectations, and the idea of romantic love, they're simply external forces, circumstantial and fleeting, a web of illusions spun by pressure and convention. When we step outside the noise and truly reflect, the truth becomes almost impossible to ignore. Countless people are stuck in relationships that no longer bring them joy. They're trapped in the routine of pretending day after day, because to admit they might be happier on their own would mean admitting to society's harsh judgment of failure. So, they stay, out of habit, out of fear, out of the belief that being with someone, no matter how empty the connection, is better than standing alone. It's a pattern we've been conditioned into since childhood, one that tells us, this is just what we do. What makes this so heartbreaking is that society doesn't challenge this narrative. Instead, it celebrates it. It pushes people into relationships that are nothing more than empty shells of connection. The love they preach to us is not love at all. It's a gilded cage, adorned with superficial promises, trapping us in a cycle of dissatisfaction. Love, as it is sold to us, does not elevate our spirits. It suffocates us, holding us down with its unrealistic expectations and fleeting joys. Yes, in the beginning, the sparks may fly, and the excitement may feel overwhelming, but eventually, those fireworks burn out. All that's left is the smoldering haze of a relationship that's lost its vitality, disguised as commitment. And why do we cling to this? Because we fear the label of loneliness. Because we can't bear to face the discomfort of being truly alone with our thoughts, our feelings, ourselves. It's a high price to pay, to continue this charade simply to avoid confronting the painful truth that, in the end, we are all alone in this world, no matter who stands beside us. The story often begins with seduction, a dance that has, over time, morphed into an absurd performance. What once may have been a genuine search for deep connection has now become little more than a spectacle for the ego. It's a game, a competition, where the goal is not companionship, but to win the admiration of others, to be seen and validated. We present ourselves in ways that are far from authentic, and somehow we call this romance. How many relationships are born from this pretense, this charade of falsehoods? We craft an image of ourselves, carefully curating the perfect version of who we think the other person wants to see. We make jokes, we dress well, and we present only the highlights of our lives, all in an attempt to impress. But when things inevitably fall apart, when the cracks begin to show, we're left wondering why. What did we expect from a relationship built on lies? If we were part of the deception from the very start, how could we have hoped for anything real to emerge? And then we get older, and we might think that finding love in the later years will solve everything. That somehow, this will be the cure, the balm for all the pain we've endured. But here's the harsh reality. Love doesn't fix anything. It often complicates things further. What we call romantic love, this ideal we chase, is nothing more than a socially acceptable form of possession. We've been taught that love is about need, that happiness lies in the arms of another, and that we must have someone by our side to feel whole. But here's the painful truth. If you need someone else to make you happy, you've already lost. You've lost touch with the most important person in your life, yourself. You've surrendered your power, your autonomy. The real tragedy is not being alone. It's about staying with someone who makes you feel emptier, more disconnected from your true self than you ever would on your own. This is the devastating truth that no one wants to admit. We've been taught that happiness will come when we find our other half. But isn't that a degrading and unfair concept? It suggests that we come into this world incomplete, as though we were born with a missing piece that only another person can fulfill. But in truth, you are whole as you are. You were born whole, and you will leave this world whole. Love shouldn't be about needing someone else to complete you. It should be about sharing your fullness with another, not filling a void. I've come to realize that I'd much rather stay alone than be trapped in the so-called ideal of having an other half. Thank you very much. The world around us seems to push relationships onto us with the same kind of relentless force as it pushes insurance policies. You see it everywhere. The expectation that everyone should be coupled up. And if you're not, suddenly, there's this underlying assumption that something is wrong with you, that you're incomplete. You become a social anomaly, a failure in the eyes of society. But here's the real absurdity. The problem doesn't lie in being alone. No, the true absurdity is in the fear that drives people to seek out companionship simply because they're terrified of what others might think. Romantic love has ceased to be a beautiful, genuine choice. It's become an artificial need, a societal obligation. We no longer seek love because we truly desire it, but because we've been conditioned to believe we must. It's as if love has become a commodity, something we're told we can't live without. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. True love, though, isn't born from the anxiety of being alone. It's born from the peace and freedom that come with being at ease with yourself. When we're at peace in our own company, that's when love can blossom, not from fear, but from genuine connection. Sadly, too many people stay in relationships not because they want to be with their partner, but because they are too afraid to face the silence and solitude that come with being alone. The irony? Many couples, despite physically being together, are more alone than they would be if they were single. SRA once wisely said, "If you feel lonely when you're with yourself, you're in bad company." And that's the ugly truth we're all living with. Couples often don't come together because they truly desire each other's presence. No, they come together because they can't bear the thought of facing the quiet, the stillness of their thoughts. It's the emptiness they're avoiding, not each other. In these relationships, what's meant to be love becomes a strange and toxic form of emotional dependency. Trust is replaced by surveillance. If you're constantly needing to know where your partner is, who they're talking to, and when they'll be home, what you have isn't a relationship, it's an emotional prison. It's suffocating. It's not about love anymore. It's about control. And the worst part? We've allowed it to become the norm. And then there's infidelity, the shadow that haunts every interaction. I can't help but wonder, how did we get here? Why is it that cheating has almost become the exception rather than the exception? Why are we so consumed with checking phones, looking over our shoulders, and living in constant suspicion that our partner might be looking elsewhere? It's maddening. We've twisted love into this fear-driven mess, suffocating under the weight of our insecurities. What kind of love is that? When you're so paralyzed by the fear that your partner might grow bored, that they might look for someone else, what kind of foundation are you building? When you start checking your partner's phone, it's no longer about what they might be doing. It's about the realization that the relationship is already broken. But it's easier to keep pretending that everything's fine, isn't it? We're scared to confront the truth, so we stay in the cycle of suspicion, even though it poisons the connection we once had. And let's not even get started on the implications of attractiveness or social media. If your partner is active online or gets attention for their looks, suddenly, you find yourself trapped in an endless loop of doubt. It's no longer even about the act of cheating. It's the belief that it's almost inevitable. Our world today thrives on temptation, and with a swipe of a screen, deceit is as easy as breathing. If cheating is so rampant, if we've all been hurt by it at some point, then why do we keep clinging to this unrealistic idea of eternal fidelity? Why is that still the gold standard? It's time we face the truth. Love based on control is a lie. And that so-called faithfulness, forced out of obligation, is a form of torture. It's something no one should ever settle for. When something as beautiful as intimacy becomes a battlefield, it's no longer about the simple joy of being with someone. It's about maintaining some fragile and unspoken contract. But how can that possibly be fulfilling? What kind of life is built on fear and repression? Nature itself teaches us that love should be free, liberated, and kind. Anything less is simply a cage. Look at animals, at the majestic freedom they possess. None of them chain themselves to a single partner for life, and if they do choose to pair, they still interact freely with others of their kind, forging connections and basking in companionship without shame or fear. They experience joy, pleasure, and affection without the weight of wondering if they're betraying someone. There's no guilt in their pleasure. Their lives are guided by instincts and desires that are free from human-created constraints. And that's something we, as humans, could learn from. We, on the other hand, seem to have shackled ourselves to a belief system that demands we treat something as natural as sex like it's an obligation, a chore. We force ourselves to share that intimate space with the same person, day in and day out, even when the connection has long faded, even when our hearts and bodies cry out for something else. And we call this commitment. But is that true freedom? Is that the life we're meant to live? Can we truly call it love if we're just going through the motions, pretending that everything is fine while secretly feeling stifled and suffocated by the very idea of it? Why does sex, something so basic and natural, have to come with strings attached? Why must we live by rules that prevent us from experiencing a simple pleasure, one that's as necessary and instinctive as eating or breathing? What happened to freedom? Why do we let outdated societal norms dictate the way we experience one of the most fundamental aspects of being human? Sex should be as free as food, available, natural, and guilt-free. No one should feel they have to apologize for desiring it, nor should they be shamed for wanting it outside of a prescribed, often dysfunctional, framework. For those who embrace casual relationships, guided by mutual respect and consent, the act of intimacy is a reflection of their truest selves. They are living authentically, in alignment with their desires, untethered by a sense of guilt that society has attached to such natural inclinations. And yet, this very freedom, this choice to embrace pleasure without constraints, becomes a threat to those who are emotionally imprisoned by traditional expectations. If you choose to experience intimacy on your terms, you are often labeled as cold, detached, or uncaring. For women, these judgments are even harsher and more cutting, as though their right to embrace their sexuality is something that needs to be contained, controlled, or worse, erased. But the real immorality is not in experiencing sexual freedom. It's in the hypocrisy that permeates the very core of our expectations around fidelity and purity. It's in pretending to be faithful, pure, or virtuous while secretly fantasizing about betraying the very person you're with. It's in the silent wars we fight within ourselves, torn between what we desire and what we are told we should desire. So, what's stopping us from living authentically? The answer is painfully simple. It's the very same societal norms that those who preach them fail to follow themselves. The truth is, it's the hypocrisy of the ones who scream the loudest about faithfulness while, deep inside, they wish they could break free from the chains that bind them. They're the ones suffocating, yet they refuse to break free. There's no peace in pretending to uphold an ideal that goes against the very grain of who we are. Forced monogamy doesn't nurture love. It creates tension, resentment, and suppression. Human desire is as natural as the need to breathe, and pretending it doesn't exist or trying to repress it doesn't make it go away. The more we push it down, the stronger it becomes, until we're consumed by our inner conflict. I've talked about this before, how ignoring our instincts can be destructive. It's a warning about the consequences of denying who we truly are. If you choose to share your life with someone, let it be because you see a shared vision, a mutual understanding, and a common purpose. Don't do it because you believe that person is the missing piece of your soul. We don't need someone to complete us. We are already whole. True love doesn't exist in dependency or sacrifice. It flourishes in mutual respect, understanding, and a shared journey. Love that is based on need rather than mutual growth is fragile, and it often leads to resentment and heartbreak. True intimacy comes when two people walk side by side, lifting each other, never dragging one another down. Love should make us feel free, not trapped. The problem, I believe, isn't inherently about having a partner. It's about the societal expectation that marriage or a lifelong commitment is a non-negotiable part of our lives, simply because that's what the world tells us is normal. This relentless pressure to conform to someone else's idea of a successful life can lead us straight into unhappiness. It's astonishing, honestly, how many people still cling to the belief that living according to these traditional norms will somehow bring them emotional fulfillment. These are often the same individuals who unquestioningly trust governments or institutions to uphold their rights, despite overwhelming evidence that they've often failed them in the past. The irony is hard to ignore. True freedom, the kind that comes from deep within, is found the moment you stop blindly following the script society has written for you, especially when it comes to relationships. The truth is, we've been taught to believe that without a committed partner, we're incomplete, that we're missing something fundamental. But the reality is that when we shed these external pressures, when we stop playing the societal game, we reclaim our power, our joy, and our unique path. If even reading this is making you uneasy, maybe, just maybe, it's because deep down, a part of you knows I'm right. A part of you senses that there's more to life than what you've been told. People often claim that fidelity is the greatest proof of love. But what they fail to realize, and what society rarely addresses, is that in many cases, this kind of fidelity stems from fear. It's not about love, it's about holding on tightly because we're terrified of losing the other person. We're afraid of boredom, afraid of being abandoned, or worst of all, afraid that someone else will come along and offer what we think we alone can provide. And isn't that the real tragedy? That we turn love into a cage built from insecurities and fears, instead of a sanctuary built from trust and freedom. Modern love, for too many, is little more than a performance, an act of commitment that masks an undercurrent of deep insecurity. How can we possibly call something love if it requires constant surveillance? In today's world, it's become disturbingly normal to check phones, dissect every silence, question every motive, and even manipulate situations just to feel secure. It's exhausting. When distrust becomes the foundation of a relationship, everything that once made it vibrant with passion starts to wither. All that remains is a hollow routine, a mere shadow of what could have been. staying together out of expectation, because it's the right thing to do, or because a child has been conceived, that's not love. That's inertia. Love should never be a prison sentence, a set of rules that bind us together out of obligation. It should be a mutual respect agreement, where both individuals acknowledge that freedom, true freedom, is not a threat to the relationship but a vital part of it. True love thrives when both partners feel free to be themselves, without fear of judgment or rejection. Freedom, in my heart of hearts, is essential to the growth of individuals. Once we embrace it, we start to realize that relationships transform, not because they're chaotic or out of control, but because desire, whether emotional, intellectual, or physical, no longer has to be suppressed or seen as taboo. When we stop stifling our true needs, that's when the real connection happens. But, of course, this doesn't fit with societal expectations. Our society has conditioned us to fear the loss of a partner so much that many end up stifling their loved ones with excessive control and restriction. The myth that control can guarantee fidelity is not just dangerous, it's destructive. The reality is that control only breeds resentment, and resentment is like a silent poison, slowly eating away at the foundation of any relationship. The need for constant validation and affection from a partner, for some, becomes like a coin that loses its value the more it's exchanged. When genuine desire, whether emotional or physical, resurfaces, most people either suppress it or try to hide it, creating an internal conflict that tears them apart. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. What may have started as an open, honest, and free relationship often morphs, little by little, into a slow-burning lie. It's suffocating, and it's heartbreaking. True love, the kind that flourishes, doesn't require walls, and it certainly doesn't need to imprison someone to keep them close. If you feel the need to control someone to keep them by your side, then, in reality, you've already lost them, spiritually and emotionally. The bird that feels the weight of its closed cage will eventually long for freedom, not the false comfort of the bars that keep it confined. We live in a world that elevates relationships and praises them to the skies, because singlehood, true, independent singlehood, threatens the carefully constructed systems that uphold societal order. A person who walks alone, who lives authentically without the need for approval or validation, is seen as a threat. They're unafraid of loss. They're unafraid of stepping outside the narrow confines of prescribed roles. This autonomy, this true freedom, is what society fears the most, and it's exactly what we should embrace. The world might try to tell us that we need to fit into the traditional molds of partnership to be valid or to feel loved, but the greatest love we can ever experience is the one we give ourselves when we choose to live freely, authentically, and unapologetically. The truth, as painful as it may seem to some, is that those who choose to walk the path of solitude are the ones who embrace the purest form of freedom, the freedom to exist authentically, without the suffocating weight of expectations placed upon them by society or others. And yet, this very freedom, to some, feels more threatening than any danger they can imagine. It challenges everything they've been taught, everything they've been conditioned to believe. Throughout our lives, we have spoon-fed the idea that solitude is synonymous with failure, an imperfection that demands correction. From an early age, we are told that to be alone is to be incomplete, like an unfinished puzzle piece waiting to be snapped into place, as though our existence is meaningless without the presence of another. But here's the harsh truth that so many are too afraid to acknowledge. Being single is not some unfortunate accident. It is a deliberate, brave choice, one that demands immense courage. The choice to embrace solitude, to step away from the chaos of relationships, is something few dare to make. Ironically, those who often criticize the single life are the very people shackled by relationships that no longer nourish them. They cling to these connections like anchors in a stormy sea, dragging themselves through life, burdened by ties they are too afraid to sever. And what's even more unsettling is that many of them convince themselves that they are happy, that they have found something real, when all they have done is trade the weight of freedom for the illusion of security. The idea that being part of a couple should be the natural state of affairs is one of the most limiting social constructs we've ever embraced. It stifles our growth, creating unhealthy dynamics that keep us from understanding who we truly are outside of the role society expects us to play. We are taught that love is only valid when shared and that our worth is measured by the relationships we hold. But the truth is, the essence of being human is far more profound and free than we have been led to believe. Our natural state should be one of liberty. The liberty to be who we are without being tethered to another. Look at the animals around us. They offer us a gentle reminder of what it means to live independently. Wolves may hunt in packs, but they rest alone. Lions live in social groups, yet they form no permanent emotional contracts with others. They understand, in ways we often fail to, the importance of individuality, of being at peace within oneself. Only humans, it seems, have managed to turn love into something that feels like a perpetual bond, a contract that demands constant renewal, a cycle that keeps us bound to one another, even when it is no longer healthy. Emma Goldman's words ring truer now than ever before. The worst kind of slavery is the one where the slave loves their chains. We live in this kind of slavery today. We love relationships not because they set us free, but because they offer us a false sense of security, a security that is nothing more than a well-crafted prison. It's a prison where we pretend to be happy, all the while knowing, deep inside, that we are caged. And yet, society insists on pushing the idea of coupled life as the norm. Singlehood is still treated as a problem, especially when it comes to women. They are pressed to find a partner, to secure their place before the world deems them irrelevant. When someone remains single for an extended period, there's a wave of pity that seems to flood in from every corner, as if the single person is missing out on some grand, pivotal part of life. But what they fail to see, what they can't seem to grasp, is that the single person is not suffering. They are standing outside, looking in, with a sense of clarity that is rare. They watch as others drown in relationships that have long since expired, trapped in a cycle of bitterness, regret, and obligation, all while pretending to smile and say, "This is what happiness looks like." There are times, perhaps more than I care to admit, when I take quiet solace in watching those same couples, trapped in their chains, criticize my choice to live alone. It's as if they are trying to justify their situation by belittling mine. The societal pressure to be partnered up doesn't stem from a place of love. It's rooted in fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of questioning the norms that have been built around us. A single person represents a challenge to the status quo, a living, breathing reminder that it is possible to exist, to thrive, without the weight of another person's expectations on your shoulders. And that, in itself, is a threat to a world that thrives on conformity. Being single is not a lack of love. It is, in fact, an abundance of love for oneself. It's a conscious choice, one that refuses to negotiate your freedom, one that doesn't demand that you trade your time, your energy, or your body for fleeting moments of connection. It is a refusal to participate in the endless cycle of seduction and possession that seems to define so many relationships today. The circus of superficial attraction, where everyone pretends not to care while scrambling for attention, is one I no longer feel compelled to join. In embracing solitude, we are gifted with the most precious thing of all, the chance to truly be ourselves, to love ourselves first, without any strings attached. And in doing so, we find a sense of peace that many may never know. This dynamic, this constant push and pull of societal expectations, is nothing short of absurd, schizophrenic, and deeply paranoid. It twists our sense of self, pushing us to conform to roles that don't reflect who we truly are. The pressure to fit into these fabricated molds is overwhelming, leaving us feeling trapped in a farce. To choose singleness is to step away from this madness, to reject the lie that you must be coupled to feel whole. It is a radical, liberating act of self-acceptance. It means letting go of the relentless charade and finally allowing yourself to exist as you are, without the need for anyone else's approval or validation. Singleness, in its purest form, becomes an act of quiet rebellion. Rebellion against the illusion that we are incomplete if we are not in a relationship. It's about embracing your truth, and in doing so, reclaiming your power. Oscar Wilde, in all his wisdom, once said, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." And truly, if we don't learn to love ourselves, how can we expect anyone else to? If a relationship isn't adding to our personal growth and isn't pushing us to become better versions of ourselves, then it is not love. It is simply an anchor, holding us back from reaching our full potential. True love should lift us, not weigh us down. It should be a complement to our lives, a joy that enriches the journey, not the sole purpose of the journey itself. When we are single, we are free to live without the constant pull of another person's needs or the expectations of what we should be for them. There is no need to perform, no need to seduce or compete for attention. We simply exist, in our own space, in our own time, free from the entanglements that often suffocate us. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Casual relationships, when approached with mutual respect, honesty, and integrity, are not threats to freedom. They are, in fact, beautiful expressions of freedom. They allow us to experience love authentically, without the weight of societal pressures or the fear of judgment. These relationships can be spontaneous, lighthearted, and deeply connected, yet they don't require the heavy baggage of ownership, control, or emotional debt. And in that authenticity, in that free-spirited connection, lies the true purpose of love: to share moments, to feel deeply, to grow together, without the need for possession. Singleness, when fully embraced, becomes an act of profound sincerity and honesty with oneself. It's about recognizing that true love isn't about holding on or clinging to another person as a source of fulfillment. It's about embracing the freedom to love unconditionally, without needing to possess or control. Singleness is the deliberate choice to no longer fall victim to the false promises of eternal love, of love that will somehow complete us. It is a courageous acceptance that love does not demand sacrifice or self-erasure. It allows us to be fully ourselves, free from the constraints of unrealistic expectations. In embracing singleness, we are gifted with the space to explore life on our terms. We can indulge in the joys of personal growth, self-discovery, and experiences that nourish our souls. There is no longer any need to live according to anyone else's script or to chase after a love that might never come. Singleness is not a temporary phase or a pit stop on the way to something else. It is a destination in itself, a place of strength, peace, and deep personal fulfillment. It's the place where we finally come to understand our worth, free from the oppressive weight of other people's judgments or the need for constant validation. For most, this place of freedom is elusive, because many are lost in relationships that never should have begun. Relationships that distract from who they truly are, relationships that steal precious time and energy that could have been spent nurturing their growth and happiness. At its heart, being single is not a punishment, nor a flaw. It is a profound opportunity, an invitation to live life to the fullest, to explore every corner of your soul, and to discover what truly makes you feel alive. This is the beauty of singleness. It allows you to step into your light, to create a life that is uniquely yours, free from the constraints of romantic entanglements that too often ask us to sacrifice our authenticity for the sake of fitting into someone else's idea of what we should be. Life is not about adhering to society's narrow standards or seeking the approval of others. It's about claiming ownership of your journey and deciding for yourself what brings you peace, fulfillment, and joy. If that path leads you to walk alone for a time, then let it be a journey filled with self-love, discovery, and growth. The space that singleness offers is where we find our true selves, where we connect with the deepest parts of our being, and where we learn to love ourselves fully and completely. Reflect for a moment on the choices you've made, the relationships that have come and gone, and the lessons you've learned along the way. Consider the path ahead, free from the expectations of others, and ask yourself, what does love look like for you, not as society defines it, but as you feel it in your soul? This is the path to true freedom, and it begins with the love you give yourself. As we wrap up today's discussion, I hope you've gained valuable insights about the profound freedom and self-love that comes with embracing singleness. It's not about avoiding relationships, but about understanding the importance of loving yourself first and living authentically. What have you learned from this video so far? Is it the courage to step away from societal pressures, the realization that love isn't about possession, or the beauty of truly embracing your journey? I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with one thing you've learned today and how you plan to bring it into practice in your own life. Remember, this journey is about personal growth, and sharing your thoughts might just inspire someone else. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us bring more meaningful content to you. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.